So I'm just going to show you a little bit of dry brushing. This can be for any of the sculpture pieces that you make, any of the flat pieces. Make sure that your actual fabric is nice and dry before you do dry brushing. It needs to be dry because you don't want the coloring to then go into your dry brushing color. So for this one, I'm going to mix green. So I'm just going to put a blob of varnish down. So you would have had this if you've got a craft pack. Is the Powertex varnish. Sometimes it's stubborn. Do not throw out too much. Take it in small quantities because it is air drying as well. And then pigment powder wise, you've got your different choices that you would have purchased or that you have in hand. I'm going to use these colors. So we've got a PE green, which is nearly finished. So dip your brush in the varnish. Dip the tips of your bristles, sometimes in white. You don't have to. I'm just trying to make more of a milky colored green. So I'm just going to dip it in there. Put it out the way because I will mess everywhere. When you're dipping in your powders, be very careful not to scoop. You're just dipping your brush in to pick up the coloring and mix it in. So the more green you put in, the darker the color will be with any other color that you're doing. So I'm just dipping my brush again and mixing. So smaller quantities are easy to work with. If you're doing a bigger sculpture, when you get used to it, you'll start mixing in bigger quantities. Because sometimes if you're mixing 3 different colors all in one go, it's hard to then pinpoint the same color again. So the consistency I work on is it mustn't be too transparent in color. So you can see it's a very, very deep color. And then I go in with a bit of bling bling. So I know I've only got a tiny bit in here, so I'm just going to tip some in. It's just to add a bit of interest. I mean, you could add silver to your colors. If you have any of the Art Loft colors as well, you can add that there. Always have a jar of water on hand. I don't at the minute. I literally just move my water out the way. The reason being is your brushes will harden up. It does ruin your brushes if the varnish does dry out. So just squeeze excess. And the reason why I use a small brush is if you're using 3 different colors, if you were to then mix it with a big brush, you'll have 3 different colors distributed throughout your brush. So I like to use a small brush, mix it up, and then obviously put it in the water to wash your brush. I'm just going to put it to the side. When I do dry brushing, I dip and I zhuzh away from the big blob of color. So I've dipped it, wet my brush, and I zhuzh it around to make sure all my bristles are covered in green. And then there's 2 ways of dry brushing. You can either drag it very gently across parallel. So I'm holding my brush parallel and just drag it across gently so that it just touches the tips of the actual piece. Or if you want a very intense coloring, you go in. It's like a rough brush, I call it. And you get in all those areas, like so. So now I'm going into the wet mixture because I know I want to have a nice dark, deep green. So it depends on how you want. This is why I like to layer up with different colors, different hues of golds and that. Because after this, I can then, just how I showed you how to dry brush parallel, you can then dry brush parallel some golds or silvers and actually pick up all those beautiful textures of the fabric. It does wash out your hands, so don't panic. But just be cautious. If you don't really want to get your nails dirty or hands dirty, then obviously wear gloves. But it does wash out your hands, don't worry. So all the way around, there should be enough. If it starts to dry a little bit, I always just a teeny tiny blob of varnish. I just mix it around just to try to pick up as much green as I can, because I don't really want to mix any more. It will just be a waste then. But you notice how much I mix with my brush. A little goes a long way. So don't over mix. Mix in small quantities and work your way around. When you're dry brushing, coloring, anything with Powertex, it's all about building up your coloring. So sure, I've gone in with just green, but if I wanted to get a bit more highlights, I'd go in with a different color green, maybe dry brushing over the actual edges of it, just to get some different hues. So I'm just going with all my excess, just seeing if there's any extra bits popping out. I quite like the black or the bronze sticking out. So if you're using bronze Powertex, you'll have some bronze sticking out. If you have black Powertex, you have a bit of black sticking out. But that's it. Literally, that is it. Dry brushing. And again, this dries really quickly. This is instantaneous dry. So that was my dirty finger earlier. It's dry. So that is ready to then go outdoors. But obviously, you need to keep your pieces indoors for 3 weeks before you can put them outside for them to be weather resistant when you're making sculptures. So that's a very quick tutorial on how to dry brush, how to mix your coloring, and then just how to give it different hues and colors.